Welcome to the Peep Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Maroc, and on this episode, we're talking about a topic that might be far deeper than you've imagined: lucid dreams. Back in 1990, Queensryche released one of my favorite albums and an all-time favorite song. Silent Lucidity spoke to me in a way that I couldn't quite explain. I was 16 years old, loved heavy metal and hard rock, and had a history of occasional dreams that came true. I had to look up the definition of lucidity when I bought the cassette tape. Yes, I said cassette tape. And since then, I've been intrigued by the idea of being able to control my own dreams. And while I've had some dreams that I've managed to change while dreaming them, I've never been totally aware that's what I was doing while in the dream. I'm still hopeful that I'll get there, especially after having this conversation with Robert. Robert Waggoner wrote the acclaimed book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, now in its 10th printing, and co-authored Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple with Caroline McCready. Both books are available in Audible, Kindle, and CD MP3 format. His books have been translated into multiple languages. A past president of the International Association for the Study of Dreams, IASD, Waggoner serves as co-editor of the online magazine, The Lucid Dreaming Experience, the only ongoing publication devoted specifically to lucid dreaming. A lucid dreamer since 1975, he has logged more than 1,000 lucid dreams. Let's dive in with Robert. Hi, Robert. Thanks for joining me on the Peep Podcast today. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Nicole. Thanks for the invitation.
Really happy to have you here. I think this is a really interesting subject, and I've had a lot of people ask me about dreams, like lucid dreaming, dream interpretations, and how you can control your dreams. Before we get started, I do want to get a definition out there because a lot of people have probably heard the term lucid dreaming, but I'm not sure everybody knows exactly what it is.
Yes. So a lucid dream is any dream in which you realize within the dream that you're dreaming. You literally know, hey, wait a second, this is a dream. And so I just want to contrast that to normal dreaming. So imagine a normal dream, you're driving a car, then you're on a motorcycle, then you're on a bicycle, then you're on a skateboard. You just go along with whatever happens, or you make up a story and to kind of explain how it happened. But in a lucid dream, you go, wait a second, this is too weird. Oh, this is a dream. And at that moment, you can begin to make decisions about how you want to relate to the dream, how you want to influence it. I don't use the word control, but I do use the word that in a lucid dream, because you're more aware, you can relate to the dream in a new way.
Okay. And how did you get into this topic? Like what inspired you to start researching and looking into lucid dreaming?
Yeah. So first off, I just had a really interesting dream life as a little kid. I would be other places, see things, learn things. But the one thing that really got me hooked was occasionally I'd have precognitive dreams. So imagine in the dream, some little dream figure would say something that was really an unusual set of words. And I'd wake up thinking, boy, that's unusual. And then I'd be on the playground with my, seventh grade friends, and someone would say that exact set of words. And I'd go, whoa, wait a second. A dream figure said that in my dream, and now this kid has said it. How weird is that? And so that really got me interested. And then how I got deeper into lucid dreaming, if you can imagine, I was a high school junior back in 1975, and I was reading the book by Carlos Castaneda called Journey to Ixtlan. And in this book, his shamanic teacher, Don Juan, tells him to find his hands in the dream state and realize he's dreaming. And that's what got me started on this whole thing, because there really wasn't a technique. And so I just created my own technique. And within 3 days, I had my first consciously induced lucid dream.
That seems really fast.
I think it was because I was so bloody curious. Can you really do this? But I knew about the power of suggestion and all that. So before I'd go to sleep each night, I would suggest to myself while looking at my hands, tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. And I just say that for about 5 minutes quietly in my head and fall asleep. And so I was putting a lot of mental energy into that intent. And on the third night of doing this practice, I'm walking through my high school hallway. And again, I'm in high school at the time. And it all seemed very real. And all of a sudden, my hands pop right in front of my face. And I go, oh, my hands, this is a dream. And it was so wild to realize that those football player guys, hey, they're dream figures. And this wall that feels so cool and nubby, just like the wall does feel in that high school hallway, it's made out of dream stuff. And I went on and had an incredible lucid dream. And so after then, I was just hooked.
So what is your favorite thing to do when you're lucid dreaming?
Oh, man. That I want to tell you that lucid dreaming is kind of a path, because so I started lucid dreaming in 75. The scientific evidence came out in 1980. And so once the scientific evidence came out, I could talk to people about it without them telling me I was, having a dream about a dream, or you can't be conscious in the unconscious. That's what people would say. But at first, it's just so much fun to play around. You can fly through the sky, you can walk through walls, you can pull your arm and make it 15 feet long. You can do all this just wild, fun stuff. And so the first part's fun. But as you get deeper into it, you realize that in a lucid dream, if you know how, you can access creativity, you can work on physical healing, you can interact with what I call the awareness behind the dream, that I basically think is your inner self. You can do spiritual practices. You can meditate in a lucid dream. You can heal your physical body, if I didn't say that already. Anyway, it's an open platform. You can pretty much do whatever you want. And that just makes it infinitely extraordinary, because there's just no end to all the things you can do.
Wow. So a personal example. I'm going to ask you if this was a lucid dream or somewhere on the verge of a lucid dream. So everybody, supposedly if you're in a good state of mind, you can dream that you're flying, or that's one of the reasons people dream they're flying. I read that somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah.
So sometimes I do have those dreams where I'm just walking along and suddenly I'm floating, and then I realize, oh, I'm flying. And I had a dream a couple months ago that kind of stuck with me, because I was walking around this really cool town. I have no idea where it was, but it was this village, and there was kind of a Renaissance type festival going on.
Right.
And I found this building, and I walked into the building, and when I did, it was kind of a music venue, and I started floating, and I thought to myself, well, I usually only do this in my dreams, but I didn't like it. I somehow convinced myself it was real and not a dream.
Right.
And the dream continued, but I don't think I was doing any true influencing. I was just like, well, this is neat. I can usually only do this when I'm dreaming.
So that's the beautiful thing about lucid dreaming, is there's kind of levels of lucidity, because oftentimes people will do exactly like you did. They'll notice that, oh, I'm floating, or I stepped over that puddle and I glided for 10 feet, to get over the puddle. And they'll think, oh, I only do that in dreaming. So at that moment, they're right at the doorway of full lucidity, because they've begun to notice, this is not right. This is the kind of stuff that happens in dreams. And then you have to just move it a little bit more and ask yourself, am I dreaming? Or you could do a reality check. Like a reality check would, just to make sure that you're in the dream state, because it seems so real. You might want to do this. You might grab your index finger and begin pulling. And if it gets longer and longer, like Pinocchio's nose, then you know, hey, this is a dream. or you jump up in the air and you see that you're floating and you go, oh, this has to be a dream because I don't float in waking reality. So those are the ways that people, make that transition. But there's all these various levels of lucidity, and that's a problem for beginners because they'll become lucid, they'll realize, oh, this is a dream, and then they'll go exploring and they'll get so caught up in the interesting things that are going on that they'll just return to regular dreaming, or they'll think it's real and think that, oh, obviously I've woken up because there's my friend Betty and she lives down the street and we were going to meet at 10 a.m. or whatever. And so that's the kind of thing and that's why, in my books, I teach people how to respond when you first become lucid, so that you stabilize the lucid dream and you maintain your focus so you don't return to regular dreaming.
Yeah. So how can you use and I don't want to give everything away that's in your books, because I do want people to actually, check out your books and
oh, thanks.
Really go farther into this with way more than we can cover in a 30-minute interview. But like how you mentioned that people can heal themselves in their dreams. Just kind of a quick overview, if that's possible, of how that can happen.
Yeah. So first I want to say that there's what I would say the proof of concept is already in the scientific research. So Keith Hearn in England and Stephen LaBerge in the USA, separately, they both came up with the scientific evidence for lucid dreaming. And that is that they asked the lucid dreamer to come to the sleep lab, and they put all these scientific data, physiological data things on him, and also rapid eye movement pads. And they told him, look, when you become lucidly aware, move your eyes left to right 8 times, and that'll get recorded on the rapid eye movement readout. And that'll show, it'll be so strange because normally in a dream, our eyes are moving every which way. It'll be so strange, it'll just provide the scientific evidence. But then Stephen LaBerge went on and did these kind of experiments. So he would bring in lucid dreamers into the lab and he'd tell them, okay, when you become lucid tonight, first signal with your eyes that you're lucidly aware, and then signal that you're beginning the experiment. And I want you to alternate in the lucid dream that you're squeezing your right fist and your left fist and your right fist and your left fist. And we'll have these little measurements on your forearms to see if there's any muscle movement, because will a dream physical action show up as a body waking reality physical action? And it did. And so He had people do the same thing, respiration, counting, singing, different hemispheres of the brain acted up just like they would in waking life. So I call that the proof of concept that lucid dream activity affects the physical body. So my good friend Ed Kellogg, he was the one who kind of got this started. Back in the late 70s, he wrote an article about how he had healed himself in a lucid dream. So he was eating a shish kebab and he punctured his tonsil. That's how enthusiastic he was eating it enthusiastically. So then what happened? His tonsil got infected. His throat began to swell up. He had red lines running down his side of his neck. And it was a horrible feeling. So he decided before he went to sleep that he was either going to try to have an OBE or a lucid dream or something and heal himself. He became lucidly aware. He directed healing energy onto his throat in order for it to activate a healing. And he said when he woke up, I believe like 80 or 90% of the pain was gone. And within 3 hours, all the red lines disappeared. Wow. And the infection went away. And so that's just kind of, so that was way back in the late 70s, or maybe the mid 80s when Ed wrote that. Anyway, it was a long time ago. But since my book has come out, both of my books have chapters on healing and lucid dreams. People send me their stories of healing themselves in lucid dreams. And it's just fantastic because there's a lot of things that doctors can't take care of, like there's this one guy who had gastroesophageal reflux disorder, GERD. Mm-hmm. And it was so bad. He had it for years. He had to sleep upright in kind of a lazy boy, for years in order to fall asleep so his GERD wouldn't get out of control. The medicines weren't helping, the doctors couldn't help. So he reads my book, he goes, oh my God, people are healing themselves in the lucid dream. And so it takes him 2 lucid dreams, but after the second one, he just started sleeping in a regular bed. All of his GERD systems disappeared, and that was great. And then I also do this magazine, the Lucid Dreaming Experience magazine. And in a recent issue, a young guy, I believe he's from Europe, he said he'd been to the website and he'd read about these examples of physical healing. And so he decided to try it. He has what they call eye pigment dispersion syndrome. And what happens is the pigment on your eye flakes away, and then it clogs up the ducts that drain your eye, and then so much pressure builds up in your eye that you can literally go blind. But here was the beautiful thing. This guy showed the record of his eye exams in 2016, in January of 2020, and then a month after he did this lucid dream healing. And suddenly the eye exams, he shows the results. Suddenly his eyes are almost as good as they were 5 or 6 years ago. And
wow.
And the doctor said, the doctor was just like, oh my God, you've had a reversion. And I don't think that happens in eye pigment dispersion syndrome. I think once your eye pigment starts flaking off, it just starts flaking off. And the young man said, you want me to tell you how I did it? And the doctor said, okay. He said, oh, in a lucid dream, I intended for it to be healed, and this big, white light appeared, and I thought I'd been healed. And the doctor says, well, I don't know how you did it, but you've had a spontaneous reversion, and it's incredible. So anyway, that's the beautiful thing. But again, I do think that the scientific research has already shown the proof of concept, and now it's just to investigate it more. But sadly, in the field of dreaming and lucid dreaming, there's hardly any scientific research dollars put into anything, and especially something as speculative as this. So
yeah,
that's too bad.
I can imagine that lack of funding would definitely limit the research. That seems to be the biggest problem in anything that's considered parapsychology and paranormal. It's just trying to get somebody out there who's got the money and the interest to be able to, donate in a big way to the cause.
Exactly. But I do think it'll be a fascinating area once it starts to get studied, because already in lucid dreaming, some therapists use it to help people who have recurring nightmares from PTSD. Yeah. And so I think it's recognized in the DSM literature, the kind of handbook of modalities to help with recurring nightmares and PTSD. Lucid dreaming is listed, as one of them. It's not the top one, but it's one of them. The top one was actually, I think it's called imagery rehearsal therapy. And it was actually created by a doctor who saw what lucid dreamers were doing. And then he just transferred the principles to waking people and had waking people do it. And so basically they're kind of practicing lucid dreaming in their imagination while they're awake, and they're having wonderful results. So anyway, it kind of shows also how you can use what we're discovering about the state of unconscious and the state of dreaming and transfer it to the waking, and still that'll help people. But there's a lot of potential there, and we've only just begun, as Karen Carpenter would say.
So, and one of the things I was going to ask you about is how can you use it to kind of, like, if you have a recurring nightmare, say, one of the I'm being chased nightmares, and I turn around and I can't see what's chasing me, but I know something's chasing me kind of thing. Like, how could you use lucid dreaming to stop those?
Yeah. So here's what you do. You notice that, wait a second, this is that same recurring nightmare of being chased, because normally it has the same sort of feel and the same sort of activity and all. And so first you go, wait a second, I've had this before, this is a dream. And hopefully at that moment you'll become aware, oh, if I've had it before and it was a dream, now this must be a dream, so I'm dreaming this. So you'll achieve lucidity. So what psychotherapists have realized is oftentimes if you just change one thing as soon as you become lucid. So like if you find yourself in a red barn and you in your mind make it green, you've changed one thing.
Okay.
That what they discover is just by becoming lucid and changing one thing, normally the nightmares cease, or they drop down to becoming 99% less frequent or whatever.
Wow.
But what you can do if you're smart, and what I would suggest in my books, is you should turn and see what's facing you and ask it an open-ended question like, who are you, or why are you chasing me? So a young guy wrote to my website, and he told me that he'd read my book and he was having this dream of being chased. And then he remembered, wait a second, this is that same crazy dream. And so he becomes lucid, turns around, and he asks the guy, who are you? Why are you chasing me? And the guy replies, I am your fear of boredom. And the guy goes, oh my God, I do have a fear of boredom. I'm constantly on my phone. I'm constantly doing things. I'm constantly filling up the entire day. And so it was really a revelation. So that's the value of asking the figure, who are you? What do you represent? Because oftentimes it's trying to get your attention. It's kind of what Carl Jung called the shadow, the denied, ignored, repressed parts of the self that are normally in the shadow's position behind you because you don't want to face it. And when you do face it, and when you do ask it, what do you represent? Then you can learn like, oh, that's what it is. You know, it might be your fear of success. It might be your fear of failure. It might be your fear of bullies. It might be, whatever. But when people figure it out, it's a huge relief. And normally the next day they're on cloud nine.
That's awesome. It makes sense. Just, I guess the trick is being able to lucid dream so that you can do it. So do you think that anybody can lucid dream, or do you think some people are more likely to be able to do it than others?
It's interesting. They've done surveys of like college students in psychology classes, and normally around the world, about 70% of the students reply that yes, they've become aware at least one time that they've realized within a dream that they're dreaming. But then when they look at the groups, they'll find that about 25% of the lucid dreamers, of those people who said yes, say that they become aware at least one time a month that they're dreaming. So those are what science would call frequent lucid dreamers. And occasionally you do meet people who lucid dream all the time. Also, it was interesting, there was a survey in Germany. A woman, Ursula Voss, did a survey of 694 German school children ages 6 to 19. She found that in that age group, 51% had already had a lucid dream, and that actually 20% of the 8-year-olds had already had a lucid dream.
Wow.
And so again, in our society, we don't talk much about dreaming, kids are having it spontaneously. And so it's natural. It's not something artificial. It's natural. But so I would say that if you have good dream recall, you can become a lucid dream amateur at the very least. And by even amateurs do amazing things. I've had people in my workshops on their third lucid dream. Not only did they blow their mind, they blew my mind with what they're able to achieve. But in the workshop, they learned all the lessons and the right approach. But anyway, I think virtually, if you have good dream recall, you can become a lucid dreamer, at least at an amateur level. If you want to really become a master of lucid dreaming, then it helps to have kind of a drive, kind of a desire to master the area.
Like you did, like you were
I got sucked into it. I didn't really realize. Here's the thing that blew my mind. So again, I taught myself how to lucid dream in 75. For 5 or 6 years, I was lucid dreaming by myself, didn't really have any instructions, but I kept learning the principles of lucid dreaming and the dream environment. But then it was in 1985, I was part of a 3-year lucid dream study group, and every month we had a goal to achieve. And that month in 1985, it was find out what the dream figures in your lucid dream represent. And I thought, oh, that's a piece of cake. I can do that. So I became lucid, followed this woman into an office. Now there's 3 women in the office and a guy in a 3-piece suit. I walk up to the guy in the 3-piece suit and I say, excuse me, sir, what do you represent? And I thought he would respond because that's what's happened in all my other lucid dreams to that point. But instead, a voice from above him, a non-visible voice from above him, boomed out a partial response. And so I said, blah, 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 what? And then it boomed out the whole response. And after that, I began to wonder, is there an awareness behind the dream? And so then I started posing questions to the awareness behind the dream. I'd just ignore the dream figures and I'd say, hey, dream, show me something important for me to see. And then suddenly the entire lucid dream would change and I would be seeing something important. Or sometimes just one, new dream symbol would appear. And then I began to, can you explore concepts? How much does this awareness behind the lucid dream know? And that's why I call my first book Lucid Dreaming Gateway to the Inner Self, because when people begin to have this experience of interacting with the awareness behind the dream, that a lot of them just have their minds blown. It's just like, oh my God, this is so wild.
So you mentioned dream symbols, and I don't know if you want to kind of explain that a little bit, because there are a lot of books out there with dream symbology, and I don't know if that's the same thing that you're talking about.
Yeah, I have the view, and this is kind of the view of the International Association for the Study of Dreams, of which I'm a member, is that everybody's dream symbols are unique to themselves. So for example, if you grew up in a family and you had a nice dog, for you, the dream symbol of a dog might be loyalty and friendliness and all that kind of stuff. But imagine another person who got mauled by a dog when they were 8 years old. They got all ripped up and have scars all over their body. To them, a dog does not represent loyalty and friendliness and all that kind of stuff. Right. So it just depends on your own personal condition. That's why the best books, I think, on dream interpretation are the books by Gail Delaney, a wonderful therapist out in the Bay Area. And also there's a wonderful one, The Universal Dream Key by Patricia Garfield, because these books can ask you to think, if your teeth fall out, they'll ask you a series of questions and then you realize, oh yeah, yesterday I looked like a fool. And so when I see my teeth fall out, I look like a fool. And, yesterday I had that experience. But the beautiful thing in a lucid dream is sometimes, so first you can ask a dream figure, who are you? What do you represent? And oftentimes a dream figure will tell you exactly what it represents. And it's a mind-blowing thing. But sometimes you'll have to respond to that. And so for example, I tell the story of one night I become lucidly aware when I find myself in a farmhouse in the South. And the farm wife puts beans on my plate. And I think, wait a second, I don't live in the South in a farmhouse. And oh, this is a dream. And so at that moment, I could feel that there was energy behind me. And that's what I tell people in my workshops, always go to the area of the most energy. And so I turn around and it's a young woman smiling at me. I pick her up, put her in front of me, and I ask her, who are you? Who are you? And she replies, I am a discarded aspect of yourself. And so then I have to think, well, wait a second, how do you respond to a discarded aspect? And I think, oh, if it's discarded, it wants to be accepted. So from my heart, I begin to accept it and I send it acceptance and, kind of love and acceptance. And as I do so, the dream figure begins to shrink. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And finally, when I totally accept it, it bursts into light and that light energy comes into me. And I woke up, it was so energetic.
Wow.
So the next day I wondered, well, what was that all about? A discarded aspect, what does that mean? But then here's what happened. A week later, I realized, oh my God, every day since that lucid dream, I've been thinking I should try to write that book on lucid dreaming. That project I discarded a year ago, I got in about 50 pages and just hit a wall. And I discarded it a year ago. And I thought, oh, that's what that dream was about. That was all that discarded energy of my first attempt at writing a book. And now, because I had reintegrated that energy, now I had the kind of the energy to go forward with it and move forward. But that's the important thing. There's a lesson here in telling this story is, so if you meet an aggressive dream figure in your lucid dream, send it what it lacks. If it's full of anger and hate, send it love and acceptance. And as you do so, it'll begin to change. And then here's the lesson. When you change your mind, you see it change, then you realize, oh, this is a projection of my mind. Because when my mind changes, it changes. And oftentimes that's really a revelation for people, because, oh, I'm being chased by a demon, in my lucid dreams. I go, okay, stop, ask it, who are you? What do you represent? And then send it whatever it lacks, And when you do so, you'll watch it shrink. It'll become a little boy who just wants a hug. Aww. And you'll go, oh my God. Exactly. So anyway, that's the beauty of it. You can ask the dream figures what they represent. And also I've had lucid dreams when I've met really intelligent dream figures, and I've asked them to explain the symbolism in the lucid dream. And I would point at things, oh, what does that represent? And they explained everything. And I was like, oh my God, this is 10 times better than those dream dictionaries. This is great.
There's a lot of depth to this, like a lot more than I think most people realize, because most people think, oh, well, if you lucid dream, you can let yourself fly or go explore other places you've never been or that sort of thing. And to basically let your dream be your therapist is pretty amazing.
That's why I decided to write a book. So my first book came out 12 years ago. And I was seeing all these incredible things you could do. And I'd go to the International Association for the Study of Dreams conference, talk to other lucid dreamers, and they're just doing amazing things. I'm thinking, why isn't somebody writing about this? So, in my book, I have a chapter on getting information outside of linear space and time. And I have a chapter on interacting with deceased dream figures. And I have a chapter on physical healing in lucid dreams. And I have chapters on all sorts of wild stuff. And what happened, I began to get all sorts of emails from people like, oh my gosh, I became a lucid dreamer back when Stephen LaBerge first published his research in his first books. But I gave it up because I just realized, oh, there's nothing to it. But now I've read your book and, oh my God, there's all this opportunity. And so that's why I wrote, because there's just enormous. It's an open platform. But it also connects to ancient spiritual traditions. Like there's a Buddhist dream yoga tradition. The Sufis had a practice. Taoists actually have a secret practice. A lot of Native American tribes actually have the practice of lucid dreaming as part of their spiritual tradition. And it's so deep. But the beautiful thing is people have been talking about lucid dreaming for thousands of years, but it wasn't until 1980 that the scientific evidence came out. And so now science can't deny it, because science can deny OBEs and science can deny also, precognition and telepathy and all that kind of stuff. But lucid dreaming, they can't deny it. There's too much scientific evidence. And now when people start showing how they're emotionally healing themselves physically, and the other things that this crazy guy, Robert Waggoner, wrote about in his book, you can also do, and other people are doing it. And you just see how powerful a tool it is.
That's wonderful. So you've mentioned workshops a few times, and I know we've had a year of lockdowns and pandemic limitations, but do you have any coming up that you want to share, or do you do them just locally, or do you do them virtually?
I'm always happy to travel places, especially once it's easier to travel and do them. I've done them in 4 or 5 continents, but online. So I have ones that are self-paced that you can do whenever, and you can find them at my website, lucidadvice.com. I do have one coming up. It's a 30-day online workshop this June. I think it starts June 19th. And if you type in Robert Waggoner and Glidewing, you'll come. And so that's the middle of June 2021.
Okay.
In case someone's listening to this podcast 3 years
Right.
from now.
Good thinking.
And also I do them with IONS and other groups, and they just happen periodically when they do. Yeah.
Very cool. And your books, where are they available?
Yeah, the wonderful thing, so my first book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, and my second book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, with my co-author, Carolyn McCready. They're all available at independent bookstores, but they're also on Audible, because a lot of people just like to listen to it as they drive to work or do whatever. They're on Kindle. They've also been translated into French and German and Chinese and Korean and Czech and Finnish and languages like that. And so people are welcome to check it out and share them with their friends.
Very cool. Did you have anything else that you wanted to touch on?
It's really extraordinary, especially when you get information outside of space and time, because a lot of us get into dreams, because of precognitive dreams and stuff like that, and all. And when in a lucid dream you gather information outside of your own knowing, that's when you realize there's something more going on in this world. There's something, the world's different than what we're being told. And so that's why I encourage people to, use lucid dreaming as a platform to investigate the actual nature of reality. Because when you begin to do that, you begin to see that there's something more going on here.
And that is the reason that I would like to lucid dream. I have been trying, I haven't been doing it for 5 minutes every night, but I have been telling myself as I'm falling asleep, if you see your hands, you're lucid dreaming. Like, if you see your hands, start paying attention, that kind of thing. And I have not had my hands pop up in front of my face yet. So I might need to try to focus on something different.
There was a great hypnotherapist, Milton Erickson. He's a famous guy. And he said the unconscious is always listening. And so one thing, when it comes to suggestion, the actual words you use are really important. Like I remember I was giving a workshop in Bogota, Colombia. And the next morning after the first day, a woman came down and one person had a lucid dream. And she said, "Oh, last night I had an entire dream that I was trying to find my hands. So I looked under the couch sofa cushions and I looked in the drawer and where are my hands? Where are my hands?" She spent the entire, I don't know how it was translated in Spanish and all, but anyway, so that's what she was telling herself, to kind of find her hands. And so she spent the entire dream. So the beautiful thing is it shows that it got across to her unconscious, which created a dream and all. But here's what I want to tell you. Tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and then I'll realize I'm dreaming. So you have to have the stimulus and the response. Tonight, I'll see my hands and then I'll realize I'm dreaming. Okay. And when you connect the stimulus to the response, that's what psychologists call a conditioned response, then you're on your way.
All right. Yeah, I think I wasn't quite phrasing it right. So I've always had very vivid dreams, and I have had precognitive dreams, and I've had a few dreams where I don't know if it was technically lucid dreaming. Like, I dreamed somebody pointed a gun at me and I said, "You can't shoot me," and the gun fell apart in his hands. So like, it was
cool as that.
Like, yeah. I get close, but I haven't quite gotten to the point where I can, take off and start exploring or anything like that.
No, these are what I call, pre-lucid or semi-lucid dreams. You know that something is different and that gun's not real. And then you watch as it fall apart. Because the interesting thing is when your mind changes, the dream changes. And when you call out the gun and say, "Hey, gun, you don't have any power over me," then it falls apart. It shows that dreams are happening in the moment. Mm-hmm. And so dreams aren't something, cobbled together by some, God in some Paramount Studios who sends it to you, like an attachment in an email. They happen in the moment. And you see that as you change your thinking, then the dream changes. If you become fearless, then everything becomes light and the gun's not powerful. But if you become fearful, oh, now there's 5 guns and 10 bad guys and all that kind of stuff. So you begin to see that, oh, I'm creating this in the moment according to my beliefs, expectations, focus, intent, emotions, and all. And that's when you really begin to understand the true nature of dreaming, which is a whole nother podcast.
We may have to get back together for that one.
Right.
Yeah, this has been really good, and I totally appreciate you taking the time to talk about lucid dreaming. One last time, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the easiest way?
Yeah, if you go to my website, lucidadvice.com, you can read what I'm up to and what events I have planned. And also there's a place where people can send me questions or submit a lucid dream for comment or whatever. And so I'm always happy to kind of take that on.
All right. And I will have that link in the show notes for this episode. So if anybody is listening on their iPhone, for example, and looks down, you can just tap right there and get straight in touch with Robert. So thank you so much for coming again and spending some time and explaining all this. I think my listeners are really going to appreciate it.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Once again, I'm grateful to Robert for sharing so much great information about lucid dreaming. If you're interested in learning more about his work, books, and workshops, visit lucidadvice.com or click on the link in the show notes. Thanks as always to you for listening. If you have an idea for a show topic, you can fill out the contact form at peeppodcast.com. That's PEEP podcast.com. Remember, that stands for People Experiencing Everyday Paranormal. If I can find a study about it, I'll be happy to use it. Also, if you're interested in sharing your own personal stories of paranormal experiences, I'd love to have you on the show. It can be as anonymous as you'd like. You can keep up with the show on its Facebook page, facebook.com/peeppodcast. We also have a growing group linked from that page in case you're interested in joining the conversation over there. If you like the podcast, please give it some rating love on your favorite podcast app. Share it with friends and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Doing so will help the podcast be found by others. If you're interested in supporting the show financially, I've set up a Patreon page at patreon.com/NicoleMaroc. Patrons will receive special thanks and some Parrot Nerd perks. You can also look for the Peep Podcast shop at TeePublic for t-shirts and other merchandise. These links are also in the show notes. I say it every week because I mean it. No matter how you support the show, listening, telling others about it, Patreon, or sporting a tee, I truly appreciate your being here. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe and be well.